The way they moved should have been his first clue, two bodies sharing one rhythm, one soul split into identical halves. But Kim Jae-sung wasn't looking for signs of shared blood when he watched Naomi and Nadine Carter work the VIP floor of the Golden Phoenix. He was looking at them the way a starving man looks at salvation. 8 months. That's how long he'd been watching them, studying the way Naomi's laugh could disarm a violent drunk, how Nadine's hands never trembled when she served Korea's most dangerous men. They were a matched set of survival and grace, moving through his casino like they owned it, when in reality, they owned nothing but each other and the second-hand clothes on their backs. Tonight, Jae-sung decided invisibility was over. "I need both of you, private office, now." His voice cut through the casino noise like a blade through silk. The twins' eyes met that silent twin language he didn't yet know he shared, and something in their identical expressions made his chest tighten. Fear, curiosity, recognition of something neither of them could name. When he locked the office door behind them, when he turned and saw them standing together like two halves of a perfect whole, the words came out raw and honest. "I'm in love with both of you. I know that's impossible. I don't care." Naomi's hand found Nadine's. "Mr. Kim Jae-sung," he interrupted. "And before you run, before you quit, before you tell me all the reasons this is insane, I need you to know I've spent 8 months trying not to feel this. I've spent 8 months watching you rearrange flowers in the lobby when you think no one's looking. Watching you share your tips with the kitchen staff. Watching you take care of each other like you're the only family either of you has." He stepped closer, and unlike Amara with Min Jae, they didn't step back. They held their ground, these two beautiful, impossible women who didn't know they were about to destroy him. "I see you," Jae-sung said quietly. "Both of you. Every detail, every moment. You're not invisible to me. You never were." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say because he didn't know yet, was that the reason they felt like home, the reason their presence calmed something violent in him, the reason he wanted to protect them more than he wanted his next breath, had nothing to do with desire. It was biology. Blood. The cruel mathematics of DNA that would turn his confession of love into a confession of the most devastating kind. But that revelation was still weeks away. Tonight, in his locked office with the city glittering below them, Kim Jae-sung only knew that he'd found something worth more than his empire. And Naomi and Nadine Carter, orphan twins who'd spent their whole lives searching for where they belonged, felt the same pull toward this dangerous man. The tragedy was that they were all right. They did belong together. Just not the way any of them imagined. What do you think will eventually connect them together in a way no one ever expected? Hit that subscribe button and journey together into a world of love, betrayal, and choices. If you are new here, we want to welcome you, and let's prove my mother wrong of not getting to 1,000 subscribers before 2026. Back to our story. The roses arrived at 6:47 a.m. before the twins' alarm even went off. 2 dozen white roses for Naomi, 2 dozen red for Nadine, and a card in precise handwriting that read, *white for the one who questions everything, red for the one who feels everything. Both perfect, both mine. J*. Naomi crumpled the card and threw it in the trash. Nadine fished it out and pressed it flat against their kitchen counter, her fingers tracing the expensive cardstock like it was something holy. "He's buying us," Naomi said, pouring coffee with more force than necessary. "Like we're things he can just acquire." "He's courting us," Nadine corrected softly. "There's a difference, is there?" Naomi turned, and her sister saw the fear beneath the anger. "Dina, men like him don't court women like us. They use us, they discard us. Mom taught us that." Their mother, Sarah Carter, who died 3 years ago with secrets locked behind her teeth, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them fed, who'd never once mentioned their father, except to say, "Some men are better as ghosts." Naomi had inherited their mother's suspicion. Nadine had inherited her capacity for hope. The gifts didn't stop. A week into Jae-sung's campaign, their apartment building's ancient elevator got repaired overnight. The landlord claimed it was scheduled maintenance, but Naomi found a Golden Phoenix business card wedged in the elevator panel. 2 weeks in, their student loans, the crushing debt from the nursing degrees they'd never finished, disappeared, paid in full by an anonymous donor. "He's erasing our problems like we're some kind of project," Naomi hissed as they got ready for their shift. "This is control, Dina, not love." But Nadine was looking at her bank statement, at the zero balance where $47,000 of debt used to live, and thinking about what it meant to breathe without that weight. "Maybe control can look like care," she whispered. That night, Jae-sung was waiting for them in the employee parking lot, leaning against a black Mercedes that cost more than they'd earn in 5 years. He looked different out of his suits, dark jeans, a simple black shirt, his guard down enough that Naomi could see the exhaustion carved beneath his eyes. "Dinner," he said simply. "Not an order, a request. 1 meal. If you hate every second, I'll stop." "Stop what?" Naomi challenged. "The gifts, the debt payoffs, the surveillance? Loving you." The words landed like stones in water, rippling outward. "I'll stop loving you, if that's what you want. I'll go back to being the man you serve drinks to and never see. But give me 1 meal first. Let me try to explain this." Nadine's hand found Naomi's, squeezing. Their twin language. Asterisk, please. I need to know. Don't we deserve to know what this is? Asterisk. Naomi's jaw tightened, but she nodded. The restaurant was closed to the public, just for them. Hanul, the most exclusive Korean restaurant in LA, where reservations took 6 months and cost a week's salary. Jae-sung had rented the entire place, but instead of the main dining room, he led them to the kitchen where the chef was preparing a family-style meal. "I don't want you to feel like you're on display," Jae-sung explained, as they sat at the chef's table, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a working kitchen. "I want you to feel like you're home." The food came in waves, bulgogi and banchan, steaming bowls of soft tofu stew, grilled mackerel that fell apart at the touch of chopsticks. Jae-sung told them about growing up in this world, son of a man who built an empire from nothing, heir to a throne he never wanted. He spoke about loneliness in a language they understood intimately. "My father had me trained in business, in strategy, in violence," Jae-sung said quietly, watching Nadine teach Naomi how to properly hold the chopsticks he'd been patiently correcting all night. "But he never taught me how to be human, how to want something beyond power, until I saw you two." "Why both of us?" Nadine asked, the question that had been burning since that first night in his office. "Why not just one?" Jae-sung's laugh was bitter. "Because separating you would be like cutting a person in half. You're not 2 people. Not really. You're 1 soul living in 2 bodies." He paused, and something flickered across his face, recognition, perhaps, or a shadow of future horror. "I've never felt completed by another person. But with you both, I feel like I've found the pieces of myself I didn't know were missing." Naomi felt her resistance cracking like ice in spring. This wasn't the monster she'd expected. This was a man as broken and searching as they were. But as they left the restaurant, as Jae-sung's hand brushed both of theirs in the darkness, as Nadine leaned into him, and Naomi found herself not pulling away, none of them noticed the man in the hospital parking lot across the street. Kim Tae-won, the dying patriarch, being helped into his car by his nurse, catching a glimpse of his son with 2 women who made his breath stop and his hands shake. 2 women whose faces he'd seen before, in photographs buried in a lockbox, in memories of Seoul 23 years ago, in the eyes of a woman named Sarah Carter, who disappeared into the American night carrying a secret that would destroy them all. He clutched his nurse's arm. "Find out who they are," he gasped. "Find out everything." The threat came in the form of a knife pressed against Nadine's throat in the casino's back hallway, held by a debt collector who thought touching Jae-sung's property would send a message. It sent a message, all right. By dawn, the man had disappeared, and Jae-sung was standing in the twins' cramped studio apartment with a duffel bag in one hand and murder still fresh in his eyes. "Pack," he said, his voice allowing no argument. "You're not safe here anymore." Naomi crossed her arms. "We've been not safe our entire lives. We managed. That was before you became mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have terrified her. Instead, it made something warm and dangerous unfurl in her chest. "That was before every rival crew in LA decided hurting you was the fastest way to hurt me." Nadine touched the bandage on her neck where the knife had pressed, millimeters from ending everything. Maybe he's right, Naomi, just until things calm down. Things didn't calm down. They never did in Jae-sung's world. 3 days after moving into his penthouse, a space so vast their entire apartment could fit in the master bathroom, they realized the golden cage had no exit date. The penthouse was a study in controlled luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking LA, art that cost more than medical school, and a silence so complete it felt like living inside a held breath. Jae-sung gave them the entire east wing, 2 bedrooms connected by a shared sitting room, though Nadine's bed remained untouched. She'd been sleeping in Naomi's room since they were 6, and some habits were too bone-deep to break. "You don't have to stay separated," Jae-sung said one morning, finding them tangled together in one bed, Nadine's head on Naomi's shoulder, their hands clasped even in sleep. Something in his expression was soft, almost yearning. "I'm not trying to split you apart." But the penthouse did split them, in small ways. Nadine spent mornings on the balcony with Jae-sung, drinking coffee and watching the city wake. Naomi spent them researching his business holdings, his family history, looking for the trap she was convinced was waiting to snap shut around them. The meals were what broke down Naomi's walls. Jae-sung couldn't cook, had never learned, but he'd hired a chef who taught all 3 of them. They stood shoulder to shoulder in his massive kitchen, Jae-sung's hand steadying Nadine's as she learned to julienne vegetables, Naomi's laughter filling the space when he burned rice so badly the smoke alarm screamed. "I've negotiated treaties with the Yakuza," Jae-sung muttered, staring at the scorched pot. "I've orchestrated supply chains across 3 continents, but rice defeats me." "Maybe you're trying too hard," Naomi said. And when he looked at her, really looked, with those eyes that saw too much, she felt something shift. "Maybe you just need to let it breathe." Was she still talking about rice? Did it matter? The stories came at night. Jae-sung would pour expensive whiskey none of them really wanted, and talk about his father, the empire, the weight of a crown made of blood and expectations. "I was 7 when I watched my father kill a man," he said one night, his voice flat. "The man had stolen from us. My father made me watch so I'd understand the cost of mercy." Nadine's hand covered his. "That's not teaching, that's trauma. In my world, they're the same thing." He turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers, and Naomi watched the gesture with something complicated twisting in her gut. Jealousy? No, something else. The fear that she was being left behind in her own suspicion while her sister fell. But then Jae-sung's other hand found hers across the coffee table, and he held them both like anchors. "I've never had siblings," he said quietly. "Never had anyone who wasn't either serving me or trying to kill me. You two, the way you exist together, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. We're not a thing to be observed," Naomi said, but her fingers tightened around his. "No," he agreed. "You're the thing I want to be part of, if you'll let me." The kiss happened on a Tuesday. Naomi still wasn't sure who moved first. One moment they were watching the sunset from the balcony, Jae-sung talking about his mother who died when he was 12, and the next moment Nadine was kissing him, soft and tentative, and he was kissing back like she was oxygen. Naomi turned away, giving them privacy, but Jae-sung broke the kiss and reached for her. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't separate yourself. This doesn't work if you're not part of it." "This is insane," Naomi breathed, but she didn't pull away when he drew her closer. "I know." His forehead touched hers, then Nadine's. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong." But Naomi couldn't, because for the first time since their mother died, she felt like she'd found home. They both did. 3 broken people creating something whole. That night, tangled together in Jae-sung's massive bed with the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling, none of them noticed the missed calls on his phone. 5 attempts from his father's nurse. A voicemail marked urgent. A message that would have changed everything if they'd heard it 6 hours earlier. Asterisk. "Mr. Kim, your father is asking about the 2 women. He's having the genetic lab run tests. He says he needs to know before it's too late. Please call back immediately." Asterisk. But they didn't hear it. They were too busy discovering what it felt like to be complete, unaware that completion was built on a foundation about to crack apart. Should they have seen the signs? Could love this intense ever be just coincidence? What would you do if it were you? Drop your comments below. Nadine woke screaming in a language she didn't speak. The Korean words tore from her throat in the dark asterisk. Appa, Appa, Gajima, asterisk, and she didn't know what they meant, only that they burned coming out. Jae-sung was there first, his hands on her face, his own face drained of color. What did you just say? His voice shook. Nadine, what did you just say? She was sobbing, clutching at him, the nightmare still vivid behind her eyes. Cherry blossoms. A man with kind eyes and tattoos on his hands. A woman's voice singing something soft and sad. Seoul Tower in the distance. A goodbye that tasted like abandonment. I don't know, she gasped. I don't know. I don't speak Korean, Jae. Why would I dream in Korean? Naomi appeared in the doorway, her own face tight with something between fear and recognition. You used to do this when we were kids, she said quietly. Before Mom made you stop, you'd wake up crying and speaking sounds that weren't English. She'd get so upset she'd sleep in our room for weeks after. Jae-sung's hands were still trembling against Nadine's face. You said, Daddy, don't go. In perfect Korean, formal address, the way a child would speak to their father. The silence that followed was suffocating. I'll make tea, Naomi said finally, retreating because none of them knew what else to do with this information. They ended up in the kitchen at 3 a.m., the city below them reduced to scattered lights and silence. Jae-sung kept his distance now, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed, his mind clearly racing. My father had a lost love, he said abruptly, in Seoul, before he came to America, before he built the empire. Lots of people have lost loves, Naomi said, but her voice lacked conviction. He never married my mother for love. It was an arrangement between families. Jae-sung's jaw tightened, but he kept a locked box in his study. I found it once when I was 12, right after my mother died. Photographs of a woman, American, black. Beautiful. There were letters, but they were in English and I was still learning. He caught me and he touched his ribs unconsciously, and the twins understood. Some lessons came with bruises. What was her name? Nadine whispered. I don't know. He locked the box away, and I never saw it again. Jae-sung looked at them with something like desperation. But the woman in those photographs could have been either of you. The resemblance was... Stop. Naomi stood abruptly. You're making connections that aren't there. Our mother was never in Seoul. She was from Atlanta. She worked at a hotel, then a hospital, but even as she said it, she was remembering the gaps in their mother's stories, the way Sarah Carter never talked about her 20s, the decade missing from her employment history. The nightmares started when you were 4, Naomi continued, speaking faster now, like she could outrun the truth. Mom said it was night terrors, stress from the divorce. What divorce? Jae-sung interrupted. You said your father left before you were born. The twins stared at each other. Their mother had said divorce once, exactly once, when Nadine was 6 and crying about not having a daddy at the school Father's Day event. Then she'd never mentioned it again, and they'd learned not to ask. We need to go through Mom's things, Nadine said. The boxes from her apartment. We never finished sorting them. They'd been stored in a facility for 3 years, too painful to face. But at dawn, with Jae-sung's driver taking them across the city, the pain felt less important than the questions multiplying like cancer cells in their minds. The storage unit smelled like dust and grief, their mother's life reduced to cardboard boxes and plastic bins. They found the phrase, book in the 3rd box, tucked inside a makeup bag, Korean English, the pages worn soft from use, margins filled with their mother's handwriting, and on the inside cover, in faded ink, *Tae-won, Seoul, 2002. I loved you first. The book fell from Naomi's hands. Nadine picked it up with shaking fingers, flipping through pages where their mother had practiced Korean names. Kim Tae-won, Sarah Kim, Baby Kim, the same name written over and over like a prayer or a curse. Tae-won, Jae-sung breathed behind them. That's my father's name, Kim Tae-won. The storage unit suddenly felt airless. Nadine was counting backwards. 2002. 9 months. Their birthday in 2003. Seoul. A Korean man. A Black American woman. A love affair that produced. No, Naomi said sharply. No, this is coincidence. There are probably hundreds of Kim Tae-wons in Korea. This doesn't mean, but Jae-sung was staring at them with growing horror, his mind clearly making calculations they didn't want him to make. The way they all had the same rare blood type, AB negative, the way Nadine spoke Korean in her sleep, the way his father had collapsed when he saw their photograph. We need to leave, Jae-sung said suddenly. Now. All of us. We need to leave before. His phone rang. His father's nurse. He stared at the screen like it was a bomb. Don't answer it, Nadine whispered. But he did. And they watched his face drain of color as the nurse spoke, watched him grip the storage unit's metal frame like it was the only thing keeping him upright, watched their entire world prepare to collapse. He knows, Jae-sung said when he ended the call. My father knows who you are. He's had your DNA tested against the genetic database from my birth. The results came back an hour ago. Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. And Jae-sung looked at them with eyes full of devastation. He wants to meet his daughters. Before he dies. The phrase book slipped from Nadine's hands. On the concrete floor, it fell open to a page where their mother had written a single line in English, over and over. Asterisk, some loves destroy everything they touch. The photograph had been innocent. Jae-sung's phone screen, lit up at his father's hospital bedside 3 weeks earlier while he stepped out to take a call. Don Kim Tae-won, hooked to machines that beeped his remaining heartbeats, had reached for it with trembling hands. 2 women. Identical. Beautiful. One in white, one in black, their hands clasped between them, laughing at something off camera. The photo Jae-sung had taken at the penthouse, the first morning he'd made them smile at the same time. The heart monitor had screamed as Don Kim collapsed, and by the time Jae-sung ran back into the room, his father was seizing, the phone clutched against his chest, and the name Sarah torn from his lips like a confession. Now, standing in the storage unit with the truth spreading like poison between them, Jae-sung finally understood what had broken his father that day. Not a heart attack. Recognition. He never told you about her, Naomi said. It wasn't a question. She was sitting on a box of their mother's clothes, her face carved from stone, while Nadine paced like a caged animal. About Sarah. About us. He barely tells me anything. Jae-sung's voice was hollow. But I've spent the last 3 weeks tearing apart his life. Private investigators, sealed records, bribing hospital staff in Seoul. I thought, he laughed bitterly. I thought he was hiding assets, secret accounts, not a secret family. We're not his family, Naomi snapped. He's a stranger who abandoned our mother. But Jae-sung was pulling out his phone, hands shaking, scrolling through files his investigator had sent. Seoul, 2001. Your mother was stationed there, military intelligence, attached to the embassy. She had top-level clearance, specialized in Asian organized crime. He looked up, and his eyes were devastated. She was investigating my father. The words landed like bullets. Nadine stopped pacing. What? The U.S. government was building a case against the Kim family for money laundering and weapons trafficking. Your mother was the lead analyst. Jae-sung's finger swiped through scanned documents, surveillance photos, incident reports, and then a picture of their mother, 25 years old and breathtaking in a black dress, standing next to a younger Kim Tae-won at some embassy function. She looked happy. He looked transformed. They weren't supposed to fall in love, Jae-sung continued, his voice mechanical, like if he felt anything he'd shatter. But they did. For 18 months, she fed her superiors false intelligence, protected him, destroyed evidence, until someone found out. He pulled up another document, an internal investigation, Agent Sarah Carter, suspected of compromising national security, charges pending, and then nothing. Her record went blank in March 2002. They gave her a choice, Naomi whispered, reading between the lines. Prosecution or disappearance. She was pregnant. Nadine said, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. She was pregnant, and they made her choose between prison and running. Jae-sung nodded. My father didn't know. The investigators found emails she never sent, still in a draft folder on a seized server. She was going to tell him the night the government raided her apartment. By the time he found out she was gone, she'd already disappeared into America's witness protection equivalent. New name, new life, new everything. Sarah Carter wasn't her real name, Naomi said dully. No, her real name was Sarah Williams. She was from Detroit, not Atlanta. Everything she told you was a cover story. He kept scrolling, and they saw their mother's real history. Decorated intelligence officer, fluent in 4 languages, commendations for service, and then erased, like she never existed. He spent years looking for her, Jae-sung said quietly. The investigator found financial records. My father dumped millions into finding her. Private detectives, hackers, bribes. But you can't find someone the US government doesn't want found. Until we walked into his casino, Nadine breathed. Until we came to him. The cruelty of it was suffocating. Their mother had spent 23 years hiding them from a man who'd never stopped searching. She died 3 years ago with her secrets intact, never knowing her daughters would end up in the exact place she'd run from, never knowing they'd fall in love with. Oh God, Naomi said suddenly, her face going gray. Jae-sung, you and us, we've been. I know. His voice cracked. The DNA test confirmed it. You're my half-sisters. Everything we've done, everything we've felt. He couldn't finish. The storage unit's fluorescent lights buzzed in the silence. Nadine was crying soundlessly, her arms wrapped around herself. Naomi looked like she might be sick, and Jae-sung stood there with the evidence of their shared blood glowing on his phone screen, a family tree that proved they'd almost committed the unthinkable. Your father wants to meet us, Nadine finally said. What did you tell the nurse? Jae-sung's jaw tightened. I told her we'd come tomorrow. He's dying, Nadine. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. He has maybe 2 months. He looked between them, and his next words came out jagged with pain. He wants to apologize to you for losing your mother, for not finding you sooner, for his voice broke, for what his son almost did to his daughters. I can't, Naomi said. I can't look at him. I can't look at you. I need. She stood abruptly, stumbling toward the storage unit's exit. Naomi! Nadine started after her, but Jae-sung caught her arm. Let her go. She needs to process. His grip was gentle, but the devastation in his eyes was absolute. We all do. But as Naomi disappeared into the morning light, none of them saw the black sedan parked 3 units down. The rival crew that had been watching Jae-sung's movements for weeks, looking for leverage. The men with cameras who'd just photographed every moment of their breakdown, every document on Jae-sung's phone screen. By sunset, every criminal organization in Los Angeles would know that Kim Jae-sung, the untouchable heir, had fallen in love with his own sisters, that the Kim family's succession had just become the most exploitable weakness in the empire's history. The photograph that had destroyed Don Kim Tae-won was about to destroy them all. Part 1 ends here. But the nightmare is just beginning. Can a family survive being built on lies? Should they even try? And what happens when the criminal underworld discovers that the Kim dynasty's heir has a weakness that could bring down an empire? Part 2 drops soon. Comment below. Would you forgive a father who never knew you existed? Could you rebuild love after learning it was never supposed to exist? Hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get even darker.